Alicyn Jacobson, and I'm alcoholic. And I wasn't nervous until like 3 minutes outside of getting here, and now all of a sudden I'm like, woo. Sometimes I think it's more difficult sharing your real experience, strength, and hope when you're in a room with people that you've known for a very long time, as opposed to a room of strangers. Anyway, I want to thank Merv very much for having me come, and actually the whole group. I've known the Common Solution guys, gosh, before they were the Common Solution guys. I've known a lot of them since they came into AA, and there's a lot of people here who've known me since I came into AA, so it's a full circle. But I'm always humbled when I'm asked to come here and do anything. So thank you very much for having me. I was just talking to somebody before I got up, and I said, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth today. I usually don't, and in regular conversation either. That's why we have amends. So I don't know. I was thinking a lot on the drive up here about forgiveness and my ability to hold a grudge for a very, very long time, and how sick that made me in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I may hit on that a little bit. But anyway, I am from upstate New York. I have a sobriety date. It's June 5th, 1993. I have a home group. It is the Buckingham group. We meet every Tuesday night in Buckingham Courthouse. And I always say, if you ever have a need or a desire to be in Buckingham on Tuesday night, please come visit us. We'd love to have you. We are a step in tradition meeting, and gosh, that's been my home group for almost 15 years, I think. I've had 2 home groups since I've been sober in AA. And my home group may not be the best home group, but it is the best for me. And I truly do have a home there. And the people who are members there or who come weekly, they are my family, and I mean that. So I said, I'm from upstate New York. I actually just went back to upstate New York a couple weeks ago to visit my mom, and it hasn't changed much. I really don't. I don't have many fond memories of upstate New York. I don't go there a lot, and I don't enjoy when I have to go there. But I did that's where my first drunk occurred, so it's important in my story. I was 13 years old, and I'm sure I had sips here and there. I grew up in a family riddled with alcoholism, so I'm sure, I think my grandmother used to give us alcohol when we were teething, or, I got a bee sting once, and she put alcohol on it. That's just what she did. Alcohol solved everything from a really early age. But my first drunk of purpose and of my recollection was when I was 13. And a girlfriend of mine and 2 boys, we were having a double date. And I used to say that seriously, and I just laugh now. Lately, in the last year or so, I laugh because I think, 13, who has a double date? We were just getting together. And she got a fake ID and bought some beer. Back then in New York, you could buy beer and wine at the age of 18. And we were 13, so she must have passed, or they didn't care. It was back in the 70s. Things were a lot laxer then than they are now. And we all took some from our homes, and we met at the railroad tracks by this canal. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I even remember what I was wearing before I ruined the outfit by rolling around in the mud and vomiting profusely. I had 4 Molson Goldens, a flask of Burgundy, and a flask of vodka, all to myself. And something happened that night. I was introduced to the effect produced by alcohol, and I didn't know leading up to that night that I was looking for a solution. I didn't know that at age 13 I had a spiritual void that I was going to go on a long run trying to fill with alcohol and a whole bunch of other things. I do know that before I took that drink, I was a really angry girl. I still have an angry edge to me today. I was really insecure. I lied. I lied when it was easier to tell the truth, which that always astounded my father. He'd say, "My God, Alicyn, this question you could have told the truth and it would have been okay, but you chose to lie anyway." And I just did. Lies fall out of my mouth. I stole a lot before I took a drink. I always wanted to have at least what you had, or maybe a little bit more. I was very into my image, what you thought of me. If I present myself a certain way, then you'll think certain things of me. And so I would do whatever I felt it necessary to keep up that image for you. And so, before I took a drink, I actually sort of needed to take a drink. I was just really, our doctor's opinion talks about we are irritable, restless, and discontent unless, then we experience that ease and comfort, the sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. I experienced a lot more than a sense of ease and comfort that night, I will assure you. But before the fit hit the shan that evening, I did. It was like I felt funny. I felt pretty. I've always, even today, am awkward in conversation with people. People always made me afraid. I was so afraid of what you thought of me, so afraid that we'd be talking, and in your mind you're thinking, God, this girl's a dork. She's a jerk. She's this. She's that. And I just couldn't even get words out of my mouth beyond, hi, how are you? And as most of you sitting here probably know, once you have a few drinks in your system, the switch is on. And I would say a lot more than, hi, how are you? Probably a lot more than you felt like hearing. And I just remember feeling okay. I remember feeling a part of. I had found my solution, though I wouldn't have said that's what it was at the time. But I had found my solution. And then during the course of the evening, the fit did hit the shan, and I started vomiting, and I started, crying and talking about how awful my life was, and I told you I was rolling around by this canal. Well, the neighborhood heard, and somebody in the neighborhood called 911, and I'm assuming that's how I got home in an ambulance that evening. And we lived in a cul-de-sac. My parents were divorced at the time, and I say at the time because my parents were married to each other and divorced from each other twice, all before I was out of high school. So, anyway, I got taken home in an ambulance. I was really sick. My mom and her sister stayed up with me that night, and it was just, it was a mess. And I came to the next morning, and, my body was bruised from rolling around and stumbling and falling, and everything hurt. But I knew that I was going to do that again. And really, what I thought is I just need to control the little outbursts and the throwing up. But if I can do that, I think I'm really going to enjoy drinking, And most people, I have a former coworker, and she used to tell my husband and I that she doesn't drink a lot. She doesn't drink more than like 2 or 3, because if she has more than 2 or 3, her eyes get fuzzy, and that frightens her, And I thought, oh my God, I don't even relate to that at all. Or there's always somebody that we all know, if after a couple they begin to feel it, and that's when I really am like, I want more, because I enjoy feeling it. With a normal drink, or when they begin to feel it, they stop. And I have absolutely nothing in common with that. That's when I just keep going, and I'm looking for more. And I will search my cabinets for vanilla extract at 3 a.m. if I don't have it in my house, just so I can get some more alcohol in my system. So anyway, that next morning, I knew I'd do it again. I didn't know how, and I didn't know when, but I knew that drinking was something that I enjoyed. It gave me release and relief. It seemed to fill that spiritual void that I didn't even know I had. And, when I first came into AA and I heard people talking about a spiritual void, I had no idea what they were talking about, though I sat there and nodded my head because, I don't want to look dumb. But to me, what that means is I am disconnected with my fellow man. I have no relationship with any kind of higher power. I don't even understand that concept. That would explain my big fear of people. I'm disconnected from you and from any kind of God, and I feel empty on the inside. So when I feel that way, I'm going to do stuff to fill it up. Anywho, I lost my train of thought. There's a lot to be said about those announcements at the beginning. So I've got this spiritual void that I don't know I have. And I'm introduced to alcohol, and that seems to fill the bill really, really well. And when I was 13, I did not drink every day. I didn't drink every weekend. I would say maybe once a month when we could steal it from our homes, or my friend with the fake ID. But when we did, it seemed like every time I drank, something happened, you know? Bad consequences, little brushes with the law, you know, pool hopping and getting told to go home, you know, that kind of stuff. But pretty quickly, my friends in New York knew that I didn't drink like them. I mean, when I was like 14, my girlfriend, the one with the fake ID, who I thought drank like me, actually didn't drink like me. She said, you know, I wonder if you're alcoholic. And at 14, I don't even think anybody knows what an alcoholic is, but so I'm already getting labeled alcoholic at age 14. And for the longest time, I didn't know what one was. And our literature says if when you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely, or if when drinking you have little control over the amount you take, you probably are alcoholic. You only have to answer yes to one of those. And I always answer yes to both, vehemently. So anyway, at 14, I'm being labeled sort of an alcoholic, and people don't like to drink around me because I ruin their fun. I always would have some dramatic crying explosion, and I would put a damper on the evening. And so people didn't want to hang around me, and I was beginning at that early age to have to change friends, geographical friendships, if you will. And the day and time came where I did not get along with my mom. I don't know when it just seems like that's just the way it was. I can't look back and say, well, this event happened and then we didn't get along. We just didn't get along. And for very good reason, she didn't trust me. I would verbally assault her, physically assault her. I'm not proud of how I treated my mother at all. It was not good and it was not right. But one weekend, she let me have the house to myself. And she was going to visit her sister in Ithaca. And what I didn't know was that she had told the neighbor to watch the house and gave the neighbor her phone number in Ithaca to contact her in the event she saw anything suspicious. Well, of course she did. You know, I had the party planned before my mom left for Ithaca. And all these people are in the house. We're drinking. We're doing outside issues. We're just doing stuff in that house that ought not be done. And so my mom got the phone call, and she came home from Ithaca and walked into her home. Now, if my son did this to my husband and me, I think I would hit the roof. But back then, I didn't care. You know, it didn't matter to me. I acted like it was my house. People were in her bedroom doing things that she probably was not thrilled with. It was awful. And I was just so drunk and out of it. I had such an arrogant chip on my shoulder. I had an attitude that the world and its people owed me something. And everybody was there to serve Alicyn. And so when she came in to her home that way, that was it for her. She was so angry, and I acted like, what's wrong? You know, why don't you go back to Ithaca? You know, I mean, I may have even said that to her. And one of the things my mom always did when we would argue was the big threat looming over me was, you're going to go to Virginia and live with your father. And my brother had moved there the year prior because of his own stuff. But she never followed through with it. I always managed to talk and manipulate my way out of it. And this night was no different. You know, pack your stuff. You're leaving tomorrow. And I just went up in my room. I didn't care. I was really drunk. I didn't think I was going anywhere. Well, the next morning, she came in my room. She had called my dad that night, and he bought a ticket for me. And so, by golly, I was coming to Virginia. And I packed really quick. And I couldn't believe it. So that was probably the first real consequence that I had as a result of my drinking. My God, I had to leave the state. And I came and lived with my dad. And my dad and I always had a very, very good relationship. Although, you know, my dad was a very, very strict military man. He graduated from the Naval Academy. He was just... very strict, very structured. So actually when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I did not buck the structure. I had spent my whole teenage and early adult life bucking the structure, and when I came to AA, I was just tired of bucking the structure. And it got me nowhere at home, and I figured it would get me nowhere here. So my dad had a structure laid out, and he told me, you know, I know you're smoking cigarettes, there's going to be none of this, none of that, none of anything that I was doing. And he sort of laid down the law. And I was a little intimidated by my father, so I always agreed with him to his face. But then I'm the child who sneaks out the window at night and puts a teddy bear in the bed and pulls the covers over it, you know. And that's the kind of stuff I pulled. Within a week of living in Virginia, I found water seeks its own level, and I found my own level of water. I found my own people. And it's much like how I feel like the people in Alcoholics Anonymous are my people. Well, this little crowd I ran around with in Virginia, they were my people back then. And we did stuff. I say now, things are so different now. I got away with stuff that I'm sure would have sent me to jail, maybe, or juvenile detention center at least. And I just never got caught. I'm quite sure some people who have got caught don't appreciate me saying that, but I truly didn't get caught a lot. And my girlfriends and I would go to the giant grocery store and take those big bottles of Budweiser. We'd get some food that looked good, and we'd go in the ladies' room and drink and eat. And we'd be in that ladies' room in the grocery store for hours. And back then, the cigarettes weren't locked up, and we'd take a few packs of the cigarettes, too. And we'd be smoking, drinking, and eating. And one time, I know we were in there at least an hour and a half, and people are banging on the door. I'm surprised somebody didn't get a manager. But that's what we did. We would go do that. That's how we drank. We shoplifted it. And in high school, I started going to the high school parties, and, you know, you get your license, and then things start getting a little tricky. And I went to a grain alcohol party, and my friend was driving, and we hit a telephone pole coming home head on at like 40 miles an hour. I don't remember the accident. I do remember waking up in the emergency room with an attendant pulling glass out of my head. And my parents were back together at the time, and my father was absolutely furious. I had a ruptured sternum and all sorts of stuff. The man who found the vehicle thought we were dead because we weren't wearing our seatbelts. And anyway, I really am lucky to be alive when I think about it now. And I didn't care because I wasn't driving. It wasn't my fault. A theme that has run like a thread through my life is it's not my fault. If I can find somebody to point the finger at, I will. And so I just pointed the finger at her that night. You know, I wasn't driving, and my dad drove me by the telephone pole. My friend's mom brought the car up and put it in the front of the high school to show everybody. I was horrified, but, you know, it wasn't my car. And that's sort of how I thought. I mean, that's really how I thought. I was really above the rules, above all of it. And I always landed on my feet somehow. Although, you know, you land on your feet long enough, and later on in life you don't land on your feet, you start landing on your derriere. So I just never thought anything was my fault. I didn't see what the problem was. I thought people were on my case. I thought my mother was out to get me. My parents started sending me to psychiatrists and psychologists. I was really, really angry. When I didn't have alcohol in my system, I was putting my fist through a wall or getting in punching fights with people. I didn't know what was going on. I used to cut myself. It was just bad. I was not happy, and I couldn't have told you why. You know, now I know I had a real strong case of alcoholism that was untreated, and that's all it was. But I got diagnosed with all sorts of disorders and all kinds of things. It was just... My high school years were, you couldn't pay me to go back to them. You really couldn't. I feel sorry for my son when he goes there. You know, I really do. I won't be able to tell him that, but I really do. So I was either grounded or in a psychiatrist or psychologist's office pretty much for 4 years. That sums up that. I got into one college, the only one that would accept me. I applied to 4 or 5. I applied to a lot. I'm surprised I graduated high school, but I did. And so I looked at college as a real escape. I could not wait to get out of my house. At that point, My parents were divorcing again, and I thought, I was happy because I thought, good, my mom won't be there when I come home on, winter breaks and stuff. Isn't that hideous thing to say? But that's what I thought. And I didn't care what it did to my dad. I didn't care about anybody. I didn't care about anybody in our family, nothing. And I used college as a way to just get away. I thought, good, now I don't have anybody making rules, nobody telling me to be in by midnight, nobody telling me to study, nobody taking away my telephone, nobody doing this, I'm in charge. And isn't that funny? There's a part in Bill Wilson's story that said, I had arrived. Well, that's how I felt when I went to college. I had arrived. That's about the most arrogant thing, and I thought I had arrived a lot. And I've actually experienced that feeling in sobriety too, and that's not good when that happens. I did things in that school. I had this, our book talks about, we can have moral and philosophical convictions galore. In my mind, I would set this bar that if I ever do this, or if I ever say this, or if, a little moral ruling stick, if you will. And if I ever do any of these things, then maybe I might look at my drinking. I never said I would stop. I would just say, maybe I might look at it or slow down. Well, when I went away to school, all bets were off, and I did everything I said I wouldn't do, and then some. I couldn't even go to the dining hall. I was so ashamed of myself. And it was a very small campus. Everybody knew everybody back then, and I just had, the only solution I could think of was, I can't come back here. I have ruined my name. And so I started doing all these college and university geographics. And then at least in my experience, when I'm drinking and I'm in the throes of alcoholism, whatever tries to get in between or in front of me and a drink has to go. Whether it's people, education, work, you name it, my values, it's all going out the window. And I just want to reserve my right to drink. I remember thinking, God, if I could just come home, have my 12-pack, smoke my cigarettes, and have nobody bother me, I would be okay. That was my idea of what a good life would look like. And that's kind of sad when I think about that today. But that's what I wanted. I wanted to reserve my right to drink without you getting on my back, without my brother saying to me, what are you going to do, Alicyn, just be a drunk your whole life? Or my mom calling me crying, or my dad begging me, to go to AA. I'd been introduced to AA growing up. My dad was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my brother and I sometimes would come when he celebrated his anniversary and get his chip. I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. When I got in that bad driving accident in high school, we were sentenced to one AA meeting. I don't know what you'd be sentenced to now, but we had to go. And at age 17, you look around, and the people were probably the age I am now. I'm almost 45, and I looked around, and I remember this very clearly. And I thought to myself, maybe if when I'm married and I have children and I still have a drinking problem, maybe I will come to AA. I just thought it was a bunch of old whatevers, who had nothing better to do. Well, when I landed in AA and actually stayed, nobody would be legally bound to me. So, there goes the marriage. I had nothing. I had no children. I had nothing except a sincere desperation to change my life. But yeah, I looked around AA and looked at all these old faces, and I didn't see any hope at all. I thought, I am way too young to have my life end. That's how I looked at Alcoholics Anonymous. I looked at it as a death sentence, and I wasn't ready to join you at all. Obviously, I had a lot of reservations. So I started a journey. I dropped out of, I think, the third or fourth college I went to, and that just interfered with my drinking. And I started a cycle of, getting job after job after job, getting apartment after apartment after apartment. I had become a morning drinker when I was in school. My roommate used to be one of us, and she had just started drinking again a week before school started. Isn't that lucky for me? And we would go to these parties, and I would wake up so sick. And she said, you know, if you just drink a few in the morning, you're going to feel better. And I always say, anytime I speak somewhere, that the morning drink was absolutely, bar none, my favorite time to drink. It was my favorite drink. I don't know what it was about it. There was something, all the chatter hadn't started in my head yet. I'd come to around 4:30 or 5, go to the fridge, and there was usually 3 or 4, and that was good. And there was something peaceful about it. Maybe all the worry and all the worldly clamors hadn't set in yet. You know, they set in around 6 a.m. But between 4:30 and 6, it was a very peaceful time for me to drink, and I just loved it until the very end when I didn't love it anymore. So my old college roommate introduced me to morning drinking, and that doesn't bode well when you're trying to hold a job. I would come to work just reeking. It was coming out of my pores. When I was in college, I had a seizure, and it's interesting. Bill's story says self-knowledge won't keep us sober. He said fear sobered him up for a bit. He's talking about all these intellectual propositions that they may work for a little while, but they don't work for the long haul. When I had a seizure in college, it scared me. It scared me for a good 6 hours. That's how much it scared me. And I was in the clinic, and I felt, oh my God, I didn't know what had happened. I was in class when I had it, and everybody's talking about it. No wonder I didn't go back there. I told you I ruined my name there, and I ruined it good. And I was in the clinic, and the minute I started feeling a little bit better, I thought, oh, well, this wasn't so bad. I mean, obviously, I'm alive. I can still smoke cigarettes. And after I left that clinic, I was in there for, I guess, maybe 5 hours. I was across the street at the 7-Eleven buying a 12-pack. And by evening, I was laughing about the seizure. I thought it got me some sort of notoriety. And it did, actually. So fear may sober me up a bit. Self-knowledge didn't help, because by the time I was in school and by the time I dropped out of all the other schools, I absolutely knew that I had a drinking problem. I didn't know what an alcoholic was, but by then I was referring to myself as an alcoholic. That would be my excuse to drink. You know, alcoholics, that's what we do. We drink. Actually, what we're doing here today goes contrary to everything we think, feel, and believe. When people go back out and get drunk, or when people come to meetings after having had a few, I never say anything. I used to go to AA drunk all the time. I mean, that's the normal state of mind for an alcoholic, drunk. Taking steps, getting a home group, getting a sponsor, doing all this stuff that we do, that is not natural for me. Now, I will say that has become my way of life, but that is not my natural state. My natural state is a 12-pack, a carton of cigarettes, and let me sit around and think about me all day. And now I don't have the 12-pack or the cigarettes, but I will say I do indulge in the let me sit around and think about me. So I'm losing jobs. Well, actually, I used to say when I first came here, it tells you if you stick around here long enough that you'll become more honest and probably more alcoholic. I used to say I never got fired from a job, but the reality of that was once I knew they were on to my drinking, I just didn't come back. I didn't call, no 2 weeks notice, nothing. I just didn't come back. I knew, and I was embarrassed again. So I would just look in the paper or call a temp agency and think, okay, okay. And I would just, start again at square one. It's like an omen or something. I remember going to work one morning after having like 5 or 6 beers and saying good morning to this lady named Pat, and the look in her face was just, oh my God. And I also remember going to the 7-Eleven one evening and getting a 12-pack and a pack of cigarettes, and I wasn't even drunk yet. But I will tell you, I did not bathe a lot when I was drinking. My hair is very curly, and it was a lot longer. It was really wild. And so it must have been going all over the place. And I had like 3 weeks worth of makeup on. And it was bad. And you know, the funny thing about all that is I would walk around thinking I look good. And so I was going to get some more alcohol and some cigarettes, and I walked into the 7-Eleven, and I will never forget this as long as I live, and I hope I never forget this. And the man behind the counter said, "There, but for the grace of God, go I." And I had been in and out of AA, and I don't know why that got me all going, but I knew what that meant. And I felt really low. You know, every now and then I would let my guard down enough. And I'd have, like, I'm not going to call it a moment of clarity, but I'd let my guard down enough where I could hear the truth and know that it was true. And that man, I was so ashamed. And because I'm untreated alcoholic, well, I was treating my alcoholism with alcohol back then, but my solution to that was to just bury that down deep inside and never go to that 7-Eleven again. I lived in Northern Virginia, so I had a wide variety of stores with which to go to, and I never went to the same one 2 nights in a row. And, you know, my story's kind of boring because really what I did, my routine was I'd come to around 4:30. I told you I'd drink, maybe shower, maybe not, only if I really had to. Maybe go to work, maybe not, usually not. I was a big caller-in sicker. I told one workplace that the same grandmother died twice, and they figured that out and couldn't go back there again. And, I would drink. I would watch TV, and I would drink. My friend Helen says she used to tell time by what was on television, and I remember when she said that in a meeting, I really related because I thought, my God, I did that too. You know, I would know at 3 o'clock General Hospital was on, at 5 o'clock Oprah was on. Oh my God, it was a sad way to live, but that's how I lived. And then I would pass out, and somewhere in the evening when it got dark outside, the hideous 4 horsemen would come to visit me. By then, I couldn't pay my bills. I was bouncing so many checks. Nothing in my apartment was turned on at the same time, except maybe the first month that I lived there. I wasn't sure how to pay my car payment. I didn't have any friends. If I had a relationship, it wasn't a good one. And I had so much fear of financial insecurity and just everything. I knew that my life stunk. And so I would start thinking about it, and I would try to get a plan going. And I, if I had enough alcohol in me, that gave me hope that, okay, tomorrow's a new day, and I'll solve this crisis when I get up tomorrow. But at least tonight, I'll get a good drunk going, and I don't have to worry about it. And then tomorrow came, and not only did I have no plan, I was hungover and needed more alcohol, and I had to go bounce a check to get the alcohol. It was an awful, awful way to live. I would get the shakes so bad that I remember going to a 7-Eleven, and I'm sure I was bouncing a check because God knows by then there was no money in my checking account. And for 7 years, I was not allowed to have a checking account. That tells you something about how I managed money. I'm an accountant now, so I think that just must be God's little joke on the world. But I remember going to the 7-Eleven, and I had to hold my hand to write the check, and I got another one of those looks of disgust. And by then, I didn't care. I didn't care. I was drinking for oblivion. By then, I really needed the alcohol in my system. I heard a man once say that alcohol really kept him from committing suicide, and I believe that. I know what it's like to suffer from untreated alcoholism. I have felt like often myself far more without a drink than with a drink. Though I will tell you that at the very end of my drinking, I was going to bed just praying that I wouldn't get up. I don't have the nerve to kill myself, obviously. I'm standing here before you today. But I didn't want to continue living the way I was living. And the only way out that I saw was to not be alive. That was the only solution I had. And so I would go to bed at night and just ask God, please do not let me wake up, please. And sure enough, I woke up the next day and I was ticked off about that. When I was drinking, I used to call people in the middle of the night and tell them, usually family members, this is a big clue as to why my family wasn't speaking to me. I'd tell everybody how much I hated them and how much they'd ruined my life. One night I called my mom after I got, a big round of bounce checks and I was getting a warrant served on me. I called my mom and yelled at her for not teaching me how to balance a checkbook and told her she was a horrible mother. She didn't teach me anything. And I'm sure, God, but one of these nights, I called my brother. And I don't know why. Maybe his name was just next on the list. And I told him that I wanted to kill myself. Now, for me, that is code for I need attention. I really had no idea. I had no plan. It was not going to be happening. That's just me needing attention and feeling sad and sorry for myself, full of self-pity. And I've never been a person who doesn't believe in God. I've always been of the agnostic type. I just live my life as though God doesn't exist. Not today, but that's how I used to live my life. But it's funny. I see how even back in my drinking, God knew what was in store for me. He had plans for me, though I didn't know it at the time. This night when I called my brother and told him I wanted to kill myself, I think it really freaked him out. And I think I'd be freaked out if somebody called me and told me they wanted to do that. Well, what came out of his mouth was truly divine intervention. He said, my boss is in AA, and he's into this big book, and he's going to a Joe and Charlie seminar. I didn't even know what Joe and Charlie was. And he said, would you go if he can get you in? And I wanted to die. I thought, are you kidding me? And I thought, this is not the Stephen that I know. And when you call somebody in the middle of the night telling them what I told him, you have to sort of go along with it. I told you, I'm a real people pleaser, so I can't disregard your solution entirely because I need to be able to call you again at 2 a.m. I didn't go that Friday night, but I did go Saturday. It was in Frostburg, Maryland, and there was a big snowstorm. And I had 4 big books, and I actually had to dig one out of a box in my apartment because I didn't know where any of the 4 were. By then, I had been through 4 treatment centers. I can't tell you how many detoxes. I told you I made the rounds of psychiatrists, psychologists. I've been diagnosed with attachment disorder, any kind of disorder, you name it, they labeled me with it. I've thrown the blotter test at the psychiatrist and hit him in the face. I was so frustrated. So I had been around the bend, and I had not found a solution that worked. I had not found hope. I'd been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. One time I stayed dry for 2 years, and I ran up in 2 years over $20,000 of credit card debt trying to fill up that spiritual void. I don't know if when I was in and out of AA, people talked about the steps, people talked about doing what I do today. If they did talk about it, I certainly didn't listen because I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything. I was without a drink, but I hadn't had the entire psychic change that the book talks about. I hadn't taken the steps necessary to transform myself. So I'm on my way to this big book study and thinking, oh my God. And I met the man who is now my husband. And I talk about it. It's funny. We're coming up on our 17th wedding anniversary next Friday. And I was actually driving here today thinking, number one, that I'm very, very happy that I'm married to the man I'm married to. I didn't know anything about what it was like to truly love another human being. And I've learned that from my husband and from you, so thank you for that. God, excuse me. I know how lucky I am, and I think that's what I was thinking when I was driving here today. I have been given a life far better than what I deserve, and I'm not just saying that. I believe that, and I try to show you that by my actions every day. They are very imperfect, but I do try to give back. So I met Al, and the reason I talk about it is not because we ended up getting married. He was the first person in Alcoholics Anonymous that I met that was excited about Alcoholics Anonymous. And at first it annoyed me. He had these acronyms. What are STEPS, Alicyn? Solution to every problem sober. What is nuts? Not using the steps. And I almost wish he would use these acronyms more. I'm fond of them. They used to really, really drive me crazy, and now it's funny. Now I wish he had some more. He was the first person I met who was excited about Alcoholics Anonymous. And the reason I mention that is because it gave me hope. It's not that his life was perfect, but he was happy in his life. He didn't come to meetings and talk about, oh my God, my life is awful. He'd talk about, well, this is what happened and this is what my sponsor said to do. You know, I wasn't used to that, and I'd never seen it before. I did not get sober then. My last drunk was very, very uneventful. It was. I got up at 9 a.m. By then, Al and I were living together, and the irritable, restless, and discontent were on. And at that point, the only thing I knew how to do was take a drink. I had this vision that I could come to AA, my husband would do the work, and I would get the benefit. That's not a very good plan. Our book talks about our little plans and designs, and Bill Wilson put the adjective little there for a very big reason, because my plans are silly. You know, that's a delusional plan. We're deluded, and I was very deluded for a very long time in Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought I could ride the coattails of somebody and reap the benefits. Well, the only way that I can have an entire psychic change here to produce lasting sobriety is if I do the steps myself, if I get a sponsor myself, if I tell my sponsor the truth about what is going on with me, not about what is going on with you and how you make me so ticked off that I could just jump off a bridge, but what is really going on with me. If I get a job, I show up for work every day. I get paid. You know, it's the same principle. If I show up in Alcoholics Anonymous and do what Alcoholics Anonymous asks me, I get paid. Just not in the form of money, but a much better form. So for a long time in AA, I lived my life really arrogantly. I didn't want to do anything. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was mad that my family wasn't talking to me. I felt that they owed me more than that, because after all, I am going to AA now, you know. And my family had seen me go to AA I don't know how many times. They'd been through all the treatment centers with me, all the psychiatrists, all the psychologists, all the diagnoses. The fact that I came here and landed on June 5th, 1993, it was not a different day for them. It was a different day for me. They'd seen it, and they didn't care. My family did not trust me until I was about 5 years sober. And it about killed me, but it taught me a really, really humbling lesson. That trust and respect isn't just given, it's something I earn. And it's something I earn through my actions, you know, not by my words. Our actions here speak so loudly that we can't hear what we say, you know. I heard somebody, my first sponsor, used to talk about that a lot. She'd say, you know, you're talking, but what are you doing? And she still says that. I was talking to her the other day, and she started laughing. She said, well, Alicyn, I hear you talking, but what are you doing? But she's right. And believe it or not, I was actually taking up her time talking about an issue that we're having with a puppy, you know. And Anyway, it was quite funny. I thought it was a big deal at the time, but now that I'm sitting here telling you, I'm realizing, oh my God, what a waste of my time and energy, and hers. So I learned early on that it's not what I say, it's what I do. And that's what my family was trying to tell me. They wanted to trust me. It wasn't that they stopped loving me. They just didn't believe anything that came flying out of my mouth. I remember I told my brother, he said, well, what's your new address? And I gave it to him, and he actually called my husband to verify the information. and that's a true story. And so, I had this chip on my shoulder. I told you that the world and everybody owes me. They owe old little Alicyn something. People aren't put on the planet to serve me. Actually, I'm quite the reverse. I'm put on the planet to serve you. I just didn't get that for a very long time. And I stayed sick in Alcoholics Anonymous for a very long time, though I was kept up with that old image. I can't let go of that. And I held everybody at arm's length. I didn't want to tell you how I was really doing because, oh my God, you're either going to make me do something, or you're going to judge me, or you're going to take my top secret information and talk behind my back. Who gives a rip? Now I really don't have any top secret information, but if you do take it and talk behind my back, have fun doing it. I have nothing to hide anymore. The first 9 years of my sobriety, I had everything to hide. I was living such a double life that, I told you about what went through my head when I was drinking before I went to bed. All of a sudden it's happening in sobriety, Oh my God, am I going to get found out? Oh my God, I don't know how to share in a meeting. Well, that's because you're not doing anything else. And then you go to a meeting and act like you do. Oh, well, it's just a matter of time before people find out how fraudulent you really are. And that was beginning to haunt me. My double life was keeping me awake at night, whereas, all my dishonesty and drinking was keeping me awake when I was drinking. Now, all of a sudden, it's transferred. I don't have a drink, and I'm irritable, restless, and discontent. I'm just as dishonest as I was when I was drinking. Most people go out and drink again, because what's the point? I honestly cannot tell you why that didn't happen. Well, actually, I can tell you why it didn't happen, because I actually decided to do something in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what happened. I was at a turning point. I was like what the book talks about. I was the man in quicksand, drowning, and sober. And if you think you feel cruddy coming in here, well, I will tell you, try this on for size. Be in Alcoholics Anonymous for 8 or 9 years doing nothing and feeling like you're going to kill yourself, and try see how that feels. Untreated alcoholism is just as lethal, if not more, than when we're drinking and doing whatever it is we do. And I was at the jumping off point in sobriety. And when I get to the jumping off point, I have to look good jumping off that bridge. So I've got to blame somebody. So when I do kill myself, they'll say, oh my God, she married the wrong man. Oh my God, her family's awful. Oh my God, if they had all just treated her like a queen, she'd still be with us today. Those thoughts really went through my mind. I was thinking of how at my funeral, everybody would be mad at the people in my life for taking me away from you. Isn't that sick? That's the first time I've ever shared that. I must be feeling pretty good today. Then, of course, reality sets in, and I was just losing it one day, and I called one of my friends in Richmond, and I just said, I'm just barely hanging on by a thread here. I was driving to work every day just bawling my eyes out. I had a plan to move to Boston and become a yoga teacher, and I'm quite sure if I had carried through on that plan, I'd be drunk today, but I didn't, thank heavens. Life was not going my way. I wasn't getting what I want. I'm still sicker than ever, and maybe I really am one of those people that Chapter 5 talks about, constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself and others. Maybe that's it. That's what's wrong with me. I'm always so busy trying to philosophize and intellectualize what's wrong with me. You know what's wrong with me? I'm an alcoholic, and I'm lazy. I don't want to get off my butt and do anything to make a difference. That's what's wrong with me. And so I was suffering from a big case of self-pity, and I actually just reached out. I didn't tell my friend exactly everything that was going on, but I said, I'm hanging on by a thread here. And she gave me the phone number of a woman that changed my life. changed my life. And actually, by changing my life, it changed the whole course of my life and the course of several other people's, actually. This woman, Linda, took me through the steps as they're outlined in the book. I'd never done that before. I had never, ever been absolutely, thoroughly honest and taken a personal inventory then, I think it was 2002. And I always worried what you were going to have me do in the amends or what you were going to think of me. And for once in my life, that didn't matter. It just didn't matter. I knew that if I didn't do something different, I was going to take a drink, and I just didn't want to do that. There was a moment in time where I really was desperate enough to actually listen, and that served me well. You know, surrender. My sponsor today says surrender is an event. It's a discipline. I don't just surrender, come do this stuff, and say, okay, I'm fixed. I continually go to meetings. I continually nurture that relationship with the God of my understanding. I continually reach out to other women. I continually try to help the women I'm currentently sponsoring. I continually try to see where I can be of service, though every day that I continually do this, I'm very imperfect at it. It's a good thing nobody has a video camera in my house, because sometimes what comes flying on out, I think, God, did I really just say that? Did I really just do that? Whoa. So this lady, Linda, took me through the steps, and I made amends. I saw where everything wasn't Al's fault. It wasn't my family's fault. I had a good life. I was very ungrateful and very unappreciative, you know. I know today that I truly am grateful because I try to show that to you. I try to act that way. I try to give you what I've been given. I don't sit around and look around and say, oh, God's been good to me. I try to see where I can be good to someone else. Now, if you had asked me that last night, I wouldn't have cared to be good to anybody else. I was a little stressed out and overwhelmed. So Linda took me through these steps, and she was so non-judgmental and so kind. She really made me realize that, you know what, you can come to AA. I'm not suggesting you do this, but this was what was going on with me at the time, because I had made a mess of things. But just because you come to AA and make a big old mess doesn't mean you have to go get drunk. We've got stuff to do to help clean up that mess and start out fresh. I always thought once I'd really mucked up the waters, there was nothing else to do but run away or get drunk. I'm a runner. I'm either going to move, get drunk, hit you, or something of the violent nature. And that was my reaction. You know, I don't react to my life today. I try to respond to it. Not everything is a big crisis. Not everything is a big drama. Certainly, I have learned, the biggest lesson I've learned is not everything's about me. My life today is very much about other people. Al and I went on to have a son, as most all of you know. And Jake is 2.5 years old. And I didn't know what it was like to not think about my needs for 5 minutes, but, you know, have a little 2.5-year-old running around and you can't think about brushing your hair because I want this, Mama wants some juice, Mama this, Mama that, Mama Tinkerbell, Mama blah, 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 blah. And by 7 o'clock, my husband and I were saying one night that we can actually hear him in our heads talking to us because it's just non-stop from the time you get up till the time he goes to bed. And Al said to me one night, he said, do you hear him? And I'm like, no. And he's like, oh my God, I hear him talking in my head. And you know, our hope is that he will grow up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know whether he'll need it or not, but if he does, there will be a seat here. And part of my deal today, well, I have always believed in a clear message of Alcoholics Anonymous, but now, you know, it's a little more pertinent to me. If our son comes here, I want the same message that was given to me to still be here if he needs it offered to him. I believe in singleness of purpose. I believe in one problem, one solution. Where I really, really get off center is when I start psychoanalyzing everything. I start getting up in my head. I start psychoanalyzing you. our book says we had to quit playing God because it didn't work. You know, when I can't manage my life, and I definitely can't manage yours, what I can do is I can come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I go to at least 4 meetings a week. I have a sponsor that I'm current with. Now I feel the need to say that because a lot of people have sponsors that they don't even talk to. And I asked this gal one time, I said, do you have a sponsor? And she said, oh, yeah. And I said, oh, okay, you know, what's she like? She said, well, I haven't had to call her yet because I don't have a problem. My experience is I need, for me, to establish a connection with a sponsor. Because if I don't have any kind of connection with her, I told you, I like living the double life. So when the fit hits the shan, if I'm not accustomed to talking to somebody and I don't have a rapport with them or a bond with them, what makes me think I'm going to call them when I really need to? I'm not going to. I'm going to have to work on keeping up that image. Oh, everything's fine. My sponsor today, Beth, said, she's like, I never have to really drag stuff out of you because you just tell on yourself. And she said, and if you don't tell on yourself, your actions do. That's a little funny, a little zing there. That sponsor, Linda, died. She had a stroke suddenly and died. I think she was 50. And that was just a crazy 18 months. I had lost a pregnancy. My father died 6 months later, and then 10 months later, Linda died. And not once during all of that did I think, oh my God, why is this happening to me? I will say I got a little paranoid. I remember when Al used to drive to work, I thought, God, is this going to be the day he gets hit by a bus or a Mack truck or a logging truck? I mean, I was a little fearful for a little while. But I never thought, why me? I never thought about taking a drink. What I really thought is I need to up my actions in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I did. And I didn't do it so I could come here today and tell you about it. I did it because that's what I know works. When I do everything that I mentioned, I am able to have that entire psychic change. When I go to bed at night, now I'm not going to say I don't worry about stuff. You know, I've already am starting to worry about when our son gets his driver's license, and he's only 2.5. But I don't have the hideous 4 horsemen visit me like they used to. They don't visit me anymore in a way that I feel like, oh my God, please don't let me wake up tomorrow. I have just the normal everyday worries, I guess, of all of you. I don't have to worry about going to the grocery store. I don't have to worry about getting my mail. I don't have to worry about answering my phone. Those are all things I was not able to do before coming here. The grocery store, the reason why is because I bounced so many checks. When they saw me, I knew they were going to come collect. I can look people in the eye. I can look the world in the eye today. I've made my amends. I continue to cultivate that relationship with the God of my understanding. I don't do it perfectly at all. There's some days where, gosh, I hope nobody in AA's seen me, you know. I'm certainly not a poster person for Alcoholics Anonymous, but I have a lot of hope, and I also have a firm belief that this works. Thanks for having me.